That was not me.
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor at BindTheSteelCurtain.com. It's been a weekend. It's been a long weekend. The NFL draft has officially concluded. The Pittsburgh Steelers have 7 new players, and we are going to break down day 3 of the 3-day process. Joining me, as always, our podcast producer, Bryan Anthony Davis. What's going on, Bryan?
Oh, wow. What a fun weekend all the way around. So I'm just feeling good, but not going to lie to you. I'm glad that the Steelers draft is almost over. We'll have those other picks coming in. And when I say picks, the phone calls to the UDFAs.
Yes, undrafted rookie free agents will be signed soon, and they will have that announcement shortly, I'm sure. Dave Schofield, other editor at BTSC. What's up, Dave?
Sorry, I was knocking my hydro flask over and everything, trying to get some lighting. Just so you guys know, they just announced Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick, quarterback Brock Purdy, Iowa State, goes to the 49ers. So now the draft is officially over. Well, I mean, I think we already knew the pick, but sorry we're going a little bit later, but Kevin Colbert doing his last, what we believe is his last press conference. That was really something. But the draft as a whole, and Colbert's last draft, and breaking it down and everything, it's been a crazy yet fun few days. Is a great way to say it.
Absolutely, we're going to do a lot of talk about, and on all of our podcasts, about the entire draft class, all 7 players, maybe a few undrafted free agents if 1 or 2 pop up that are noteworthy. But I want to get your all's thought just on day 3. So day 3, that's rounds 4 through 7. Let's go through what happens in round 4. This is a compensatory pick for Bud Dupree. Pick number 33 in the round, overall 138. The Steelers take Calvin Austin III, a speedster out of Memphis, wide receiver. Bryan, what do you think about the pick?
Love little guys. I love little guys that can burn. I love the fact that you got your big guy. Now you've got that slot guy. You have so many weapons now on that offense. Speed kills, and Pittsburgh Steelers, there's going to be an APB out on them for murder.
Dave, what are your thoughts on the smaller yet really fast wide receiver?
That might have been my favorite pick, the one I got the most excited about, because as I said before, everything's running together between the breaking news podcasts and us working behind the scenes and everything. But if he would have been the Steelers' only wide receiver that they took, you would have questioned, oh, he's small. Can he really do everything else? But the fact that it was him with Pickens, I think, is what really makes it so great. I love the difference in the 2 receivers that they got. I think that there's a potential for some huge playmaking ability there with Collins, right? All the names are
Austin. Austin the third.
Why did I say Collins? Where'd that come from? Austin. All these names are rushing together into my brain. It's been a long week, but no, I thought that one was pretty exciting to see what the Steelers can do. It kind of makes me think, when you have one of those guys that can do things that super quick, almost like a gadget guy, it makes me think of the I'm not saying it's going to be the same thing, but like the slash area, when you never knew what the Steelers were going to do. You wanted to tune in to see what kind of crazy stuff they could pull. Maybe they get back to tuning in to see what kind of crazy stuff they pull.
Definitely a gadget type player when in motion a lot. You're not going to see him typically just lining up and staying in one spot. My concern is maybe that he is a Dre Archer 2.0, but we'll see if that happens. I don't want to put that on him, but still, that's what came to mind when I hear about his size and his speed. Matt Canada's a different coordinator, so we'll see how things go. Now, after the 4th round pick of Austin, there was a big lull. The Steelers didn't have a 5th round pick. A lot of people thought the Steelers would trade into the 5th round like they did last year when they picked up Isaiah Loudermilk. They did not. They stayed put. They didn't trade once this entire draft. And then they finally had a 6th round pick, the 30th in that round, overall 208, and that's from the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a conditional draft pick for Melvin Ingram, which I said this to our group on Zoom when we were meeting. during the draft. I said, could you imagine if the Steelers didn't trade Ingram away? They wouldn't have had a pick until the 7th round.
Yeah,
so
wow.
with that pick in the 6th round, the Steelers take another set of brothers, essentially. Conor Hayward, tight end, running back, H-back, whatever you want to call him, from Michigan State. Bryan, what were your thoughts when they made that selection?
Well, it's almost like Cam's so old, he's probably his uncle, more like it. But no, I loved it because I like a big guy like that. And how many times have you heard over the last couple of years, wouldn't it be cool to line up Cam Heyward as fullback and just put him in from the 1 yard line? Hey, you could possibly do that with a guy like this. This guy is used to having the ball in his hands. They're probably going to go ahead and do some things like line him up as an H-back. You know, the tight end coach came out, Alfredo Roberts came out to talk about him. So he could be listed as a tight end for the Steelers. But then Mike Tomlin dusted off his phrase about Trey Norwood last year, the Swiss Army knife. Well, here we go again. He called him a Swiss Army knife just now. And there should be some exciting things having Conor Hayward in the mix.
That's Swiss Army knife. He loves that term. He's always used it. I remember him using it with Sanu when he was with the Bengals. So, but Dave, let me ask you about Conor Hayward. When they made the pick, were you sitting there like me and thinking, of course they're taking Conor Hayward? But what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, well, before I answer this question, I'm going to say, you said there was imagine what the law would have been if the Steelers didn't get that trade and had that 6th round pick. Imagine what it would have been if Bud Dupree would have played more last year and the Steelers would have been picking last night in the 3rd and not in the 4th today. Then they would have had a long break there too.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
But instead it was a 4th round instead of a 3rd. Back to Conor Hayward. Anytime I ran a mock draft simulation, which wasn't all that often, but anytime I did, if he was there in the 6th, I took him. That's just what I did. And what do you know? He was there in the 6th for the Steelers and they took him. I don't know why, no inside thing, just a gut feeling that the Steelers would go in that direction. They just got to figure out where he fits and what they want to do. So it's not like you're taking a day 2 pick and you got to figure out how to use them. This is a day 3 pick. This is the 6th round pick. If he fits in some of the things they want to do, great. If not, then Cam's brother hangs around for as much as he can. Play some special teams. It's nice to have versatility. They love versatility. That's what they got there. And I feel that the Steelers had an opening at a 3rd tight end spot there where they could have someone that could slide in. And that's where I would kind of put him if he can earn a roster spot in that role.
I mean, I feel like his path to the roster is going to be beating out Trey Edmonds. I don't think this is going to impact Derek Watt too much. I think he's way more versatile than either of those players. I think he would be more of a Trey Edmonds, that Trey Edmonds could actually run with the football if he had to. I don't think Derek Watt is comfortable in that setting. He can catch the ball as a tight end. I love the pick. I thought that, and this has nothing to do with Cam Heyward being his brother. I thought that this was a tremendous selection. I thought maybe they could have waited till the 7th. Clearly they didn't want to, even though they had an early pick in that 7th round. They wanted their guy. They wanted to make sure they got him, and they did. So I think this is a good addition. Pretty crazy when you think about 4 sets of brothers on one National Football League team, but that's the 2022 Steelers. All right, let's go to the 7th round now. Go ahead, Dave.
About the brothers, what's even crazier about that is of those 4 sets, 3 of them were on opposite sides of the ball.
There you go. Good to know. Okay, now let's go to the 7th round. The Pittsburgh Steelers had 2 selections there. They had the 4th overall pick, 4th pick in that round, the overall 225. That was from the New York Jets. I believe that was in the Avery Williamson trade. And they chose this guy, Mark Robinson, a linebacker out of Ole Miss. Now, rarely do you find a group of individuals that are as glued to what's going on in the National Football League than you do at BTSC. The brain trust was all together on the Zoom call, and when the pick was made, everyone's like, I can't find anything about this guy, like literally nothing. So I'm actually going to go to Dave first. Dave did find some information about him, and then we're going to get Bryan's thoughts. So Dave, you did the breaking news podcast. What do you think?
And that was a tough one to do, but it was nice because I could make it a little shorter because the Steelers were picking again soon. But it really did come from the guys that were helping out in that Zoom call. Jeffrey Benedict, Matty P, really, found some stuff. This Ole Miss was his 3rd school. And you find out a little bit more from the Kevin Colbert press conference that, he started at Presbyterian as a scholarship player. They did away with scholarships. He left. He went to Southeast Missouri, I do believe it is. They didn't play during COVID. So a former teammate convinced him to go to Ole Miss. That's when they had him out there just playing some scout defense, I guess, and said, hey, this guy can play some defense. And that's what he did this past year. So that's he was like second or third in tackles on the team, athletic linebacker, and someone like Jeffrey will probably want to break down how he fits into different things that Brian Flores likes to do is probably what is ultimately going to come down to.
Yeah, and that's something that when you were doing that podcast, he actually did look up some film on him. He said he's a great blitzer. He can read those holes. He was a running back. He understands that part of the game. He said coverage is a little yikes, we'll put it that way. But Brian Anthony Davis, we didn't know much about Mark Robinson. After you learn a little bit, what are your thoughts?
I still don't know much about Mark Robinson. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I think he's going to be the Isaiah Loudermilk of this draft, where people are just going to not be excited about him until they get a chance to see the guy play and see what he does. He gets a chance to earn his spot on the roster in training camp, in mini camp. So we'll see, but there's still really not much to know. But and I think it was mentioned, when you only really play 1 year at linebacker and you get 93 tackles in the SEC, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
He is an athlete. I mean, you can go from a running back, I don't care what college you're in, if you can go from a running back and still find your way to the NFL and by switching positions and going to linebacker, that's pretty special. So the Steelers then.
I'll just say almost like a tight end switching to outside linebacker at Wisconsin or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, you're true. That's TJ Watt. You're correct. All right, so now the second 7th round pick for the Steelers was pick number 20 in the round, overall number 241, and they double dipped, not with a college, but at a position. They select Chris Oladukon, quarterback out of South Dakota State. When I heard this, Jeff, myself, I'm speaking in third person. I'm not a draft Nick. I don't know players that were picked in the 2nd round, let alone in the 7th. But I knew this guy because he was reported that the Steelers had met with him, and I wrote the article for the website. And I found an interview he did with, I think it was the Draft Network, and I found it very intriguing. He was at Samford the year after Duck Hodges left. He stayed there for a year, transfers to Florida. What is the school? Come on, help me out.
Samford.
No, not after Samford. He went to
North Dakota State.
No, he went.
Florida.
He started off in Central Florida, then went to Samford.
Then he went to Samford. So he's at 3
and then
schools.
graduated, and he went to grad school for his last year for South Dakota State.
So he's been to 3 different schools, technically, in his college experience. He knows Deontay Johnson well. And now he finds his way to the Pittsburgh Steelers as that 4th quarterback that everyone talked about, including Kevin Colbert, wanting to have 4 quarterbacks. So, Brian, when you see that they drafted this athletic quarterback in the 2nd pick of the 7th round, what are your thoughts?
It makes me wonder what they have planned on a gadget side. Because I remember when they brought in Cordell Stewart in 95, when they brought in Antoine Randall L in 2002, they did a lot of gadget stuff. Now, they both played wide receiver. Are they going to play this guy at wide receiver? That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just suggesting that he might be an athlete that if they keep around, he might be something that they try to move in and do some stuff with. But this also makes me think that when you bring in 2 quarterbacks in the draft, you don't expect to cut one. You do everything you can not to cut any of your draft picks. So that means that they might be looking at moving somebody outside of the organization if it's possible. And we've talked about that last night. There are so many different ways they can go with a starting quarterback. We've heard 3 different guys as starting quarterback. I'm not suggesting that the Duke, which I'm going to call Oladukon the Duke, even though I could call him Duck because he's the DUK and he followed the Duck Hodges at Samford, so you could call him Duck 2.0. but the Duke could be in there for some different reasons, and maybe Matt Canada has some gadget plans for this guy.
You never know. And then, so what's really kind of crazy to me is, so when you think about and that was the last draft pick the Steelers made. They have 7 total picks. 5 of them went on the offensive side of the ball, only 2 on defense. Let's just kind of have an overall takeaway from day 3. Dave, we'll start with you. What was your overall takeaway from day 3 when you think about the fact that they took obviously a receiver in round 4, the hybrid H-back in round 6 and Conor Hayward, linebacker Mark Robinson in 7, and then a quarterback in the second pick in round 7. What are your thoughts on day 3 of the Steelers NFL draft?
Well, if I could say something real quick about the quarterback pick.
Yeah, sure. Go.
It's something I say all the time. When it comes to the 7th round, these are basically players that are right next to being an undrafted free agent. The Steelers simply don't want to fight other teams to get them. So they're players really around the same thing, but they didn't have to fight for them. So that's probably why the Steelers went. If there was one quarterback that they wanted over the others, then that's probably why they just went with that pick. Maybe if there was someone else there, they would have wanted, but they felt that they could get them as an undrafted free agent. There's already some rumors coming through about some players signing with the Steelers. So overall, I loved that they started strong with another wide receiver, and then everything else that they did, the Conor Hayward was something I kind of had on my radar. And then the other guys were just guys I feel that were, similar to undrafted free agents, guys you take a flyer on that spent time at 3 schools for various reasons. One, changing a position last year, things of that nature. These are picks that, you never know if you've got a Brett Kiesel or a Kelvin Beachum, or I could throw out a bunch of different names of players that never played a snap in the NFL with 7th round picks. So there's a wide range that you get in day 3. That's why it's the overall feeling, because it starts off with someone that you feel was going to contribute and get on the field to start the day, and guys at the end they're a guy that might not even make the practice squad, but yet could come through and really be like a Trey Norwood was last year.
The Trey Norwood thing's a great thing to remember from last year as a 7th rounder. Bryan, what are your thoughts on day 3 for the Steelers?
I really like day 3 because it got you something that you really weren't expecting in an extra wide receiver. That means that they're really looking at filling out that room. And we talked all along that there was a possibility that they could go with 2 wide receivers in this draft. And they did just that. And they got 2 very different guys. So you gotta kind of like that. The Conor Hayward pick, he's going to be ready to go on special teams and do a lot of the dirty work and the tough stuff, even if he's in a fullback. I really like what he can do. And they keep on saying stuff like Swiss Army knife. So it tells me that they're planning on mixing it up and just not being the Randy Land typical. So, that's what I feel like this draft is. The linebacker that they picked, he could be a special teamer to start. And then you have the pick of the new quarterback. And something that I didn't mention before with this quarterback pick, if this is a guy that they can stash on the practice squad, then they have a guy that they could look at that can throw the ball and is very shifty, the 2 quarterbacks in Baltimore. And if Deshaun Watson plays, a quarterback in Cleveland. So he could be your practice squad guy that could even emulate those guys instead of bringing a guy in for a week on your practice squad to emulate those guys. So that's something, they kind of went outside the box. There's a lot of disappointment in the live chat. You're going to be disappointed, but you aren't in those meetings. I'm not in those meetings either, but I like the vision here.
Okay, so real quick, let's look over the entire 3-day process, and I just want to ask you a simple question: what's your favorite draft pick out of the 3-day process? Dave, we'll start with you.
I can't even remember their names.
Okay, well I'll read them off. I'll read them off. Hold on, here we go.
It's Calvin Austin. It's Calvin Austin is probably my favorite one, just because of it being a 4th round pick. Yet yet it was their second wide receiver, and yet the difference that they got in wide receiver there. For some reason, I don't know why that strikes me. Maybe I'm not thinking straight right now because of the craziness of the last 3 days. But for some reason, I think that brings. I see potential excitement in the offense, which I felt a lot of times for the Steelers last year was ho-hum.
Okay. What about you, Brian? What's your favorite pick?
George Pickens. Love this guy.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I really think that he's going to add a new dimension. And wow, that wide receiver room looks really nice right now.
I'm actually going to go. You all both went with an offensive player. I'm going to go with a defensive player. I think DeMarvin Leal. I was doing a little reading on him, both through our top 250 that Andrew Wilbar and several others help with. And it was talk that he could be a top draft pick, a round 1 pick coming into last season, and it didn't play out well for him. But I see a ton of the word, Dave, that terrible P word, potential. Boy, this guy has a ton of potential, and so if the Steelers could somehow, some way, get that potential and just tap into it, my goodness, it's just could really help that defensive line that needs an injection of youth. I'm excited about that pick. And I like that. I wrote the article for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers after day 2. When they took Leal, I wrote it late last night. That guy's got a chip on his shoulder. He sent out a tweet just in general after day 1 saying, "Oh, okay, you didn't take me in day 1. Y'all are going to pay," essentially. So I love that. I love that attitude, taking it and going to turn into something good. All right, let's do some final thoughts. Like I said, we are going to be talking about this draft class a lot as the Steelers prepare for the rest of OTAs, rookie minicamp, mandatory minicamp. Then you have the lull. But I was just talking with Dave the other day about how there's still going to be a lot of news for the Steelers. The GM search is going to be completed at some point. Mm-hmm. Will Devin Bush's 5th-year option be picked up on Monday, which is when Kevin Colbert said they're going to address it? That's the deadline. There's going to be a lot of news. This does not end here. So, Brian, I'm going to throw it over to you in terms of, just, I guess, wrap things up for the weekend, what you're looking forward to coming up, what you can expect on Behind the Steel Curtain, all that good stuff.
I know you are all tired of me saying, trust the process. We don't have any scouts in our living room. They do. I'm not going to do that right now. What I'm going to say right now is there's a vision that we are not akin to right now. And Dave mentioned something earlier about the 7th round pick being the guy that you can guarantee that you can get and not have to fight for him as an undrafted free agent. You're going to start seeing undrafted free agents coming in, and we've already seen rumors of an offensive lineman. If you would have picked an offensive lineman or a defensive back with that 7th pick, would have you been happy? Because we're seeing, why didn't the Steelers draft a defensive back? We're seeing it in all caps. We're seeing a lot of people say this kind of stuff. But what if they bring that defensive back in right away? What if they know they can get that defensive back and bring him in as an undrafted free agent? How much different is that than bringing him in as a 7th rounder? So are we going to be upset if they would have brought a defensive back in the 7th round and not in the 3rd round? So there's different things to look at. But you know what? They definitely have a plan, and I really am excited to see how this plan turns out. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is not a disappointing draft. I was familiar with a lot of these names, most of these names, not Mark Robinson, of course. I'm looking forward to get to know him, and you're going to get to know him on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. You guys say one-stop shop. I say that too, but I also say non-stop shop because we are on all the time. We ran close to 2021 podcast just over the last 3 days in this draft to keep you and ourselves up on everything going in the NFL draft. And we're going to continue to do that. So you will have this podcast and all of the wrap-ups that we had, the roundups that we had, the roundtables, the Dave Schofield Breaking News podcast. If you want to go back and hear a little bit about these guys, you have all of that at your fingertips on the BTSC podcast side, the podcast family, wherever you download your favorite podcast. So it's going to be there. We're going to have, tomorrow night's going to be a very fun show for me. This is the first time I'm teaming up one-on-one with Kyle Kreis from What Ian's Talking About, and that is going to be on the Sunday night Q&A. So you're going to have some offbeat answers, but it's going to be a lot of fun talking about these guys. Hey, I can understand if you're disappointed that one guy wasn't picked over the other. A lot of people think, well, you could have waited for a quarterback, but they have a plan and they know what they can get and they know what fits. So I'm loving this. I can't wait to continue to talk about it, and I guarantee you we will. But with that being said, I'm going to take a nap.
Let's go over to Dave Schofield.
I almost did right there. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, with that being said,
no, I'm drained. I'm dragging right now. But I will say this. Did you want to ask me? Did you want to say something, Jeff, before I started?
Go ahead and be your final thoughts.
Yeah, well, some people were upset. Oh, I can't believe the Steelers didn't draft a defensive back. Oh, I can't believe they didn't draft an offensive lineman. Oh, I can't believe they didn't grab another running back. Guess what? So far, there's 3 players that have been rumored to be signing with the Steelers and undrafted free agents. Guess what they are? A cornerback, an offensive tackle, and a running back. The process is still going on right now.
Lineman now is rumored.
What's that? Yet another one?
Offensive lineman, yeah.
One from Alabama and one from North Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then a running back from Oklahoma
and a cornerback.
And a cornerback from
USC.
What was that one? I'm trying to find it again. USC. Yep. So these are some things. If you want to know more information, you got to go to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. You want to stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. It's funny because draft is, I'm going to say it again. Everyone wants to fall in love with prospects. It doesn't matter if we love them or not. What matters is if we love them when they become Pittsburgh Steelers. And so many people want to dive so much into it and get upset that, oh, well, this person went to that team or this person went to that team. You know what? Sometimes we value them more than the Steelers, and sometimes the Steelers value other people more than us. There are players that we have been really big on in the past at BTSC, and they're like, oh, that'd be so great if they were Steelers. And then they weren't. And you know what? Sometimes they weren't for a reason, and their careers don't pan out. And what do you know? The Steelers were right. Sometimes the Steelers aren't as high on someone that we might be high on, and they have a great NFL career. It's kind of how it all works. We're not the front office. We're not. So the Steelers did what they needed to do, and now that they've made this decision, I'm excited about these players. I'm ready to get behind them, and I want to see what they can do on the field. I'm just frustrated that we have to wait so long until we can see it.
I agree with the frustration on having to wait. I know for me and a lot of people out there, they want the instant breakdown analysis, why they see it on ESPN, whether it's Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, all these other people. The NFL Network has their own people. It doesn't matter where you're watching. They all have these people that want to break down and give you exactly what you want to know. I'm not that type of person. I'm sure there are a lot of fans that are like me that I want to know who they are, and then I want to kind of learn more about them as we go. Because these guys are Steelers. And these 7 players are Steelers for probably at least the next 3 to 4 years. Now's the time that we get to kind of dive into it. As exciting as this time is for the Steelers fan base, I feel like the next few weeks are very valuable in terms of learning about these players. We'll have shows that are going to dive in with people that covered these players in college that know them very, very well. It's going to be really, really good. So make sure you stay tuned. You can follow us on our audio-only platform. Wherever you get your podcast, we are everywhere. Just search Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain. We will be the top search on most of those searches on most platforms. Just subscribe or follow whatever you have to do so that you don't miss a thing. Other than that, that's a wrap for the 2022 NFL Draft. Thank you all for being a part of it. And whether you're watching live on YouTube, Facebook, or listening on the audio platform, it's been a pleasure. We will continue this labor of love. In the meantime, 7 new Steelers. We're going to talk a lot about them. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. And we will see you in the next podcast. Take it easy.